The Imperial City, baby. It can be a heck of a brawl if your kingdom isn't unified, and that is exactly what happened in Nebula 13. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and this video has been sponsored by the makers of Infinite Galaxy, and I've got to say, for the Imperial City, we thought that there would be some sort of NPC defense. There's nothing in there. So in this event, we were surprised when one of the other groups in the Nebula just waltzed right in. So we went and we were like, well, frickin', we're taking this thing. This is ours. What are you doing? Get out of here. And so we fight for it. This turns into quite the brawl until they, well, you'll see what ultimately happens here. You know, we had a friendly relationship with Rem, and our stance has always been that we would like to have a unified Nebula under the assumption that at some point down the road, just like every other game in this sort of a genre, there's some sort of Nebula versus Nebula, kingdom versus kingdom sort of an experience. So we want to be unified in preparation for that. And, you know, this was a couple weeks ago when this took place. I'm just finally getting around to editing this video. But for whatever reason, the leadership of this group was always in opposition to us rather than working together. They wanted to, you know, argue against whatever we thought was the right way to do things. And, you know, in our alliance, we've come from other games where we have a lot of players with a lot of experience leading thousands of players, nebulas, kingdoms, and so on. So for whatever reason, they think they know better. And so now might has to be right. Muscle has to be used to sort out who actually is going to get to dictate the way things are going to work in Nebula 13. So the Smash Squad goes to work, battling into the Imperial City, which, by the way, was a fight that we took in a pretty disadvantaged way. I'm going to go through all the reports. These reports are extremely important, and there aren't that many reports that you see floating around in games like this, because the cost is really expensive. I mean, the amount of resources is massive for these sorts of battles. The amount of warships that it turns out you lose in fights like this is massive. So the cost is super real. And the players that obviously came with me to play this game and have ultimately joined with the Smash Squad, we are conditioned to losing troops, in this case, warships, spending outrageous amounts of resources battling and speed-ups battling. So we're ready for this fight as it unfolds. Okay, we are mentally and spiritually prepared to take losses to get the job done. So we're battling now for the Imperial City. They won the first defense, but we keep smashing, baby. We smash and we keep pushing right with every fleet, fighting and fighting and fighting until we get control over this map, okay? And I like the fighting spirit of this group. We've always been really appreciative of that, which is why we think they would have been really great partners for working together. You can see I've got over 2,000 warships here that I've got to repair. I just spam my resources, spam my speed ups. I don't want my repair center to overflow. Like, forget it. Let's just clear this out, okay? Looks like I had a fleet that's getting attacked. I mean, whatever. It's time to fight, you know? It's time to fight. Oh, man. This continues, by the way. There's more of this. Now, after we capture the Imperial City, there's also the Imperial Guard cities on the outskirts that we're going to have to go and capture as well. One thing that we figure out, which you'll see when we look at these reports, is that being the defender of the Imperial City is a massive, 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 massive boost to your defensive capability. For whatever reason, the amount of warships that you lose is just less than what attackers lose. It's just the way that defense works for the Imperial City. Same is true for the Imperial Guard cities we found. It seems like you just lose less when you're the defender, unless you're massively overwhelmed. So in a roughly even trade, it's bad to be the attacker, it would seem. You want to be the defender for these structures. It seems like you're favored for the ratio of ships that hit your repair center versus get completely destroyed. And what these reports are ultimately going to reveal, by the way, and I know we've talked about this in a number of videos now, but it was this experience that led me to go, oh man, free-to-play players need to be using cruisers. Why is that? The first ships to fall are always the frigates, then the destroyers, then the cruisers. which means in these fights, the players who brought the frigates have the biggest repair bill by a long shot. Not by a little, by a long shot. If you're in a winning encounter and you brought cruisers and I brought frigates, if there are still some of my frigates left, you might have 100% of your cruisers remaining. In other words, a 0 repair bill. I am footing the entire repair bill for the fight. Do you understand how insane that is? I'm mentioning this because if you want to reduce your costs in war, the thing you would do is shift the burden to the pay-to-win players, make them use the frigates, you use either destroyers or cruisers, and I think, obviously, most players should just go in and... The Brontes, that's the way to go. And if you are spending a little bit, the Cyclops, the legendary tier of the Brontes, right? That's the way to go. I'll have a card up in the top if you want to see one of those videos that sort of walks through why those flagships are just so darn good. But when you look at these reports, we'll get to them soon. This is just a bit of field fighting, a bit of battling going on here. I will point out that when you fight in space, it's just pile-ups. Like, whoever piles up the most warships is likely to be in a really good position. Obviously, the tier of the warships, the quality of the flagships, it all matters. And in this game, to my knowledge, there's no such thing as really like a captain march, like from other games that we're used to, where one player's research and technology puts everybody's warships up to the same tech boosts as the captain, right? They use the same buffs as the leaders of the rally, the flagships. That's not how this works. Every flagship has its own contributions they're making. The warships are tied to those flagships. I think it's not a bad system. In fact, I'd say it's kind of a cool system. It's different than what I'm used to, but it's kind of a cool system. And the pile-up mechanic is also sort of interesting. I haven't seen a way to actually disengage from these fights. So when you're engaged in one of these fights, you're caught in space. That's it. Your fleet is there until it loses or it wins, which... Maybe there's a way to disengage. I haven't found it, but someone else could just re-engage you anyways. So there's not really a great way to escape from this. So you very much want to have the dominating presence in the field or in space here in order to fight and end up with a positive trade. So we'll show you, and again, just a couple more minutes of just fighting here in space. And by the way, you can imagine the repair bills here are... massive. So you can understand my disappointment. I'm going to talk about a little bit more drama here. When 2 weeks after this, when the Imperial City was available for contention again, folks from this group freaking attacked and killed a bunch of warships. So we decided we just were going to evict Rem from the Nebula, mostly Zone 3 actually, and put them in Zone 2. Right? And what I basically said, if you can't figure out how to be a team player, then you can't stay in Zone 3. Like, it's really simple. Team player, welcome aboard. Right? We're building for the long term here. If you don't want to be a part of that, get out. We'd rather have you here, but if you're not going to be a team player, bye. And the leadership changed. We destroyed all of their territory in Zone 3, and they did a complete change of leadership. I'm really happy for that, by the way. Their new leadership seems to be, like, super on board with the idea that, like, hey, we're going to build a top-tier nebula. We're in it for the long term, okay? And if migration ever becomes a thing, we're going to migrate a ton of players to this nebula. We're just going to make it freaking massive and have a really good time with that. So I think they're on board for the long-term vision. We're very happy that now that's the case. I'm very happy that we've got a lot of people that like to brawl in the nebula. It's just I don't think that this is the time or the place for that brawling. I'm hopeful that eventually we'll have Neb versus Neb, and that'll be really cool. So now I'm going to flip through some reports, and you can get a sense of kind of what took place. This first report, it's a field battle. We're looking at 2,900 leadership worth of repairs for us and 10,000 for them. That is because we had 115,000 leadership in the brawl, and they had 11,000. Yeah, having the numbers is really important. In this next report, we're looking at 21,700 that needs repair for us, 50,000 that needs repair for them, but more importantly, the losses, okay? The losses are crucial. This is because we were attacking an Imperial Guard city. About 6,000 losses for us and 16,000 for them. Defending is an advantage situation, but when you're outnumbered, we had 284,000 leadership to their 87,000 leadership. That's going to cause a huge issue. In this next report, They've got 150,000 leadership, 87,000 need repair, and it looks like there's about 2,000 of losses. So this is because somebody's repair center overflowed, ran out of space for warships. We had 265,000 leadership worth of warships there. Yeah, that definitely is going to go in our favor. This next report, 136,000 leadership for us. That's 22,700 worth of repairs to their 69,000 leadership. That's going to be 37,000 in repairs for them and about 5,000, I guess 4,400 in losses. And this is just a fleet in space. So a whole bunch of people at this point are having their repair centers totally overflow. In this next report, we're being attacked. I think it's an attack on the Imperial City. We've got about 65,000 worth of leadership coming at us here, and they have about 11,000 in permanent losses. We have 152,000 leadership. And this must not be an Imperial City hit. It doesn't say Imperial City. It just says defense victory. I'm not entirely sure what they hit, but they've got some major warship losses here from this hit. In this next report, this is where we actually successfully took the Imperial City. This was the second hit on the Imperial City. 175 leadership for us to the 77 for them. We took about 3,600 in losses. They took 11,700. This is a pretty big report. Although this failed attack, let me tell you, this failed attack on the Imperial City, this was the real moneymaker that makes me think they must have an advantage as the defender, purely for being the defender in this encounter. It's almost 600,000 leadership for them and us, okay? In fact, we have slightly more leadership than they do, but the number of damaged warships, so we have 218,000 that needs repair. They have 119,000. It's almost a 2-to-1 ratio, even though we brought the same number of warships. And given that our average player is probably more teched up than their average player, I just think that you get 2 for 1. Like, whatever the ratio is, we get twice as many that go to needing repairs and to being lost than they do. They have 37,000 lost. We have about 60,000 lost. That was pretty savage. Overall, I think that we go positive from all of these reports. Man, this was a pretty crazy encounter, and I have to say, it was really fun fighting. It was really fun. This is not the sort of thing you can do all the time or even every other week, because it's just going to fully halt the progress of the Nebula as we build towards, tier 10 warships, right? So my thought here is that if they add something that lets you fight, and I thought they had some plans for an event, right, where you could do a brawl and there wouldn't be any resource costs. That sort of stuff would just be incredibly fun. I'm very much looking forward to it. If you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing and leave a comment down below if your Nebula had some crazy battling over the center like we did. It was really fun to do once, but given that the costs are so steep, it's not a thing we can do on an ongoing basis and still make progress as a Nebula towards some big fight later. Until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing your Nebula.